To be here before this committee. Je suis contente de représenter mon ministère de.
I appreciate the opportunity for my department to appear before the committee today.
And our forests. Climate change is impacting the health of our environment and the well-being of all New Brunswickers. Our farmers and our fishermen are stewards of the land and sea, and it has always been in their best interests to protect the environment to assure their livelihood. When it comes to climate change action, our province has achieved a great deal over the past 5 years, but we know we still have more work to do, and we're going to build on our progress to date. The department works actively with stakeholders to be certain that they have the resources necessary to adapt and mitigate to extreme climate events. New Brunswickers have told us they want healthy and resilient communities, sustainable natural environments, and clean growth in the low-carbon economy, and we have the resources and expertise needed to make this happen. Nous savons que nous devons continuer à travailler ensemble.
We know we must continue working together to address the urgent challenges posed by climate change.
In a few years, New Brunswick has seen more and more severe weather events. In recent memory, Fiona and Dorian were both major storms that had a direct impact upon the agriculture, aquaculture, and fisheries sectors. This included damage to crops, fields, wharves, fishing and aquaculture gear. But at the same time, we've also seen how innovative and inventive our sectors have been in response to these events. We understand that our government has a role to play, and we are taking that role very seriously. I'd like to introduce the staff that is with me here today. We have Cathy La Rochelle, Deputy Minister, sous-ministre. Sarah Price, Assistant Deputy Minister of Industry Development and Aquatic Operations, sous-ministre adjoint Développement de l'Industrie et Opérations Aquatiques. Kevin McCulley, Assistant Deputy Minister Agriculture, sous-ministre adjoint Agriculture, and Jennifer McDonald, Specialist Environmental Services and Crop Specialists, Services Environnementaux et Spécialistes de Culture. C'est avec plaisir que nous répondrons.
We are happy to take your questions related to the Department of Agriculture, Aquaculture, and Fisheries role in New Brunswick's climate change action plan and give some insight on the efforts we are undertaking. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Johnson. I appreciate your opening remarks. And we'll move right into the question portion of this. Begins with the official opposition, and I see Eric Vallet with his hand up. So, the floor is yours, sir.
Merci, Monsieur le Président, et merci.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the Minister and her team for appearing today and answering our questions and concerns about climate change. So now let's get into the topic. The first question I will ask: what are the main concerns related to climate change for agriculture, aquaculture, and fisheries? And what is the department doing to help the industry to adapt and mitigate the impact of climate change?
Things that we're concerned about would, of course, be increased temperatures, longer growing seasons, shifting precipitation patterns, more intense and frequent extreme weather events. Some of the things that we're doing, we've in 2022-2023, approximately $850,000 was made available to the department through the New Brunswick Climate Change Fund. And to date, 30 projects amounting to $121,431 were related to climate change mitigation. These projects included precision farming, nutrient management planning, energy audits, upgrades, renewable energy systems on farms. We've also completed 83 projects totaling $515,882 related to climate change adaptation, which would include things like soil drainage, soil conservation, riparian protection, water supply, irrigation management. We're going to be looking at the new Sustainable Agriculture Partnership, and we'll probably be talking about that later.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Via Madame la...
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To the Minister. climate change impacts, such as the warming up of oceans, have they had impacts on fisheries? Do you know anything about this? Do you have any data on this topic?
Definite impacts of climate change on our fisheries due to the fact that we've got warming seas, and that has very not necessary, it's got very impactful consequences with various species that we have. So we're looking to work closely with the Department of Fisheries and Oceans at a federal level to look at the science that we can do to protect the species and to see how we can help fishermen maintain the quality and quantity of their catches.
Merci. La direction du développement des cultures a-t-elle une stratégie spécifique liée au changement?
Does the department have a specific plan related to climate change?
One of the mandates was to develop and begin an implementation of the agriculture climate change strategy by 2025, if you recall. And the strategy is expected to identify opportunities to reduce greenhouse gas emissions from aquaculture, and enhance carbon sinks. We're identifying opportunities to strengthen farm resiliency by adapting to climate change. We're looking at benchmarks and performance indicators and report on progress as it comes.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you to the Minister through you, Mr. Chair. How many farms were impacted by the erosion of land?
We do not have an inventory of that. We don't have numbers to give you on that. I'm sorry.
What are the damages caused by climate change that are covered by agricultural insurance?
There's a fairly extensive list, but some of the insured perils, we call them, would be drought, excess H2O, flooding, and frost.
Peut-être que vous avez répondu.
Maybe you answered the question in part beforehand, but because the impacts of climate change are increasing, is there any additional insurance supporting the industry?
So we do have insurance programs in the suite of business risk management programs that we have, ag stability being the prime example. There's nothing that has come up of late that relates specifically to climate change.
What is the department doing to assist industry to be less carbon intensive?
So recently the department has hired a climate change specialist to assist with just these very problems. We have beneficial management practices that we're looking at helping people with, and which will assist with mitigation and adaptation.
Are you aware that for any involving technologies that might assist industry for climate risk mitigation?
We do support research in this, and in agriculture in particular, there are a couple of examples would be things like no-till seeders, so we're not disrupting the earth as much. Manure spreaders, which we're actually injecting manure into the soil.
My last question for you is, what federal support is available to assist industry become less carbon intensive? There are a lot of federal, provincial, territorial agreements that we work together on. Many funding programs helping farms to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions and to improve on-farm carbon sequestering. So the On-Farm Climate Solutions Fund, the Living Labs Fund, are both federally funded programs under the National Natural Climate Solutions. The Resilient Agriculture Landscape Program is under the new Sustainable Canadian Agricultural Partnership. It's going to be the first environmental goods and services program to be administered by the Department of Agriculture, Aquaculture and Fisheries. Under the RALP, I'm going to call it because it's easier, it's going to be supporting producers with the adoption of on-farm land use and management practices, such as maximizing provision of multiple environmental goods and services, restoring, maintaining wetlands, water retention projects that may not provide significant economic return to the producer. So the department's going to continue to be working with other funding agents to both implement programs, but more importantly, to share that knowledge to producers of both beneficial management practices as well as the funding and requirements of each program. Oh, and I also want to tell, on the aquaculture side, we also have funding from the Atlantic Fisheries Fund.
Minister, thank you very much. And again, I will commend your French. Merci, bravo. Vous faites un excellent travail. Vous comprendrez que...
You do an excellent job. You will understand that in the north of the province, one of the biggest issues with agriculture is the use of pesticides. There is only one measure in the climate change plan, but my concern is the use of pesticides in agriculture. Will there be, and if so, when, measures to control pesticides, including glyphosate, in agriculture?
Refer back to my opening statement, which talks about the fact that our farmers are stewards of the land, right? They don't want to be using any more than they have to, because number one, it's expensive. And number two, they want to take care of the earth. They want to make sure that it's in their best interest to make sure that what they're putting into the land is something that's going to protect it and preserve what they're doing. We follow Health Canada guidelines. We believe in following the science. And so Health Canada continues to give us advice on pesticide applications and safe parameters, and that's what the department will continue to do.
Mais il y a aussi toute la question de... Ça ramène à...
But this goes back to the issue of agriculture without pesticide, green agriculture, organic agriculture. We try to have farms without pesticides, but the farm next door uses them. So, are there any programs for that?
So we do not favor either organic or traditional farming practices. We want to make sure that people understand that all of our programs are applicable to all farmers, and we encourage both because we recognize that there is a market within consumers who want to have organic produce, and there are those that it's not such a big deal for them. We do have an organic specialist on staff, and we support them with, we support growers with technical advice and expertise. And like I said once earlier, that we want to encourage both sides and we want to promote each.
I'd like to welcome the department here today. Our pathway towards decarbonization and climate resilience, certainly it's a document that as a government member I'm proud of that we've brought forward. And I do know that the Department of Agriculture, Aquaculture and Fisheries is certainly going to play an important part in our climate strategy action. So could the minister please tell me, what is the department doing to support climate smart agriculture, aquaculture and fisheries?
Thank you for the question, Emily Whitmore. We've got a number of initiatives supporting greenhouse gas emission reduction, carbon sequestration. We've got the New Brunswick Climate Action Plan that DAF is the lead for one of the actions. We have negotiating and finalizing the Sustainable Agriculture, Canadian Agriculture Partnership, the SCAP. We have helping industry navigating a range of provincial and federal program that is available. We've got climate change being incorporated into business risk management programs. We have the local food and beverages strategy, which not only encourages people to buy local for supporting the local economy, but also to look at the greenhouse gas benefits of having something that doesn't have to put a lot of miles on it. We're working with aquaculture sector to assess commercial kelp sources to act as feed in agriculture. We're supporting strategic projects such as anaerobic digesters. In aquaculture, we're trying to align future work under the Canadian Council of Fisheries and Aquaculture Ministers, and we're recently establishing a climate change task group. We're also focusing on sea lice treatments and other green alternatives to combat increased sea lice presence due to heightened water temperatures. And then we're working with the fisheries sector and DFO to encourage them to continue science and stock assessments as it relates to climate change, working with commercial fishing and aquaculture boat owners to reduce greenhouse gas emissions from the fleets as well.
Thank you very much. Could you please tell me what you're going to do to promote the local food and beverage production through the local food and beverage strategy?
We can really go on that one. It's kind of like the glyphosate question with Minister Holland. So the motto for the department with the local food and beverages strategy is grow NB, buy it NB, feed NB. And it's something that I've been very thrilled to be a part of because it's something that I have adhered to before I even entered politics. I believe the way that we should support our local growers and our local protein and produce processors and producers is to buy stuff that is from locally grown and locally produced farms and facilities. We are not only helping the economy of our local areas, we are assisting with families that stay right here in our province. We are assisting with developing all the recreational and municipal opportunities that come from having our dollars stay right here at home. But the greenhouse gas and the climate change benefits of buying local are huge. When you're not transporting vegetables from across the world, the footprint that we leave on our planet is much less. And that's wonderful, the fact that I can buy something that came from 2 kilometers down the road rather than 2,000 kilometers across the ocean or across the land. So it's a multifaceted program that I'm very proud to have been a part of, and I promote it everywhere I go. If you look on my phone, I've got my sticker on the back of my phone that says grow NB, buy NB, feed NB. And our restaurants and our food service industry within the province have really embraced that, in that when you go into restaurants, there's a great movement now to say, we are serving all locally sourced meats. We are serving all locally sourced produce. And nothing gets me more excited to go into a restaurant where they've got it labeled at the table saying, all of our root vegetables come from this farm. And the consumer sees exactly where that's coming from because they just drove past it on their way to the restaurant. That's the kind of stuff that New Brunswickers are buying into, and I am so thrilled to be a part of it.
Mr. The department's coming up with a new action. The provincial government is going to develop and implement an agriculture climate change strategy by 2025. Could you please tell me where you are in that strategy? And what are the points that you want to identify in that?
The strategy is expected to identify opportunities to reduce greenhouse gas emissions from agriculture and enhancing carbon sinks. I think I already addressed that once. Identifying opportunities to strengthen farm resiliency to adapt to climate change risks. We want to enhance sustainable economic growth. We want to develop benchmarks, performance indicators, and report on progress. We are in the initial stages. We're doing jurisdictional scans as well to note. We know that Canada is currently consulting the Sustainable Agricultural Strategy Plan. We're looking to hire a consultant likely this summer. We are undertaking internal and external consultations with stakeholders to develop a first draft, and the formal consultation should begin the fall of 2024.
So you're in the sort of the infancy stages?
Yes.
And you hope to have it completed by 2025?
2024.
24?
We're starting in 24, so we should be able to deliver it by 25.
Okay. So what is the department doing to work with aquaculture sector in regards to finding ways to, closed, I think it's, I'm just trying to think of closed for the salmon. What is it, Deputy?
RAS.
Yeah. So where are we on that strategy, and how is it going?
So this is one of the key strategies that we're looking at, and with the release of our new finfish strategy, which we put out last year, it is one of the key strategies we're looking at. Industry is very excited and engaged in this. We have a specialist hired within the department to deal with this file alone, and we have got some great investments within the province by groups that are exploring. You're familiar from your neck of the woods. We've got a company down there who's made some huge investments with the enclosed salmon farming, and we're very supportive of the industry.
Thank you. So in our path towards decarbonization and climate resilience, each department is, responsible for their own actions. I know you've mentioned some today. Are there any actions that we haven't asked about yet that the department is implementing or is going to implement to help us reduce our GHGs and meet our climate action plan commitments?
We've got some great things going on, and having an opportunity like this to share it with you, I'll talk fast to see if we can get as much into the time that we have. Guy likes it when I go fast. So with the Atlantic Fisheries Fund from 2017 to 2024, we're going to provide financial support to fisheries, aquaculture, and seafood processing sectors. We're going to look at increasing productivity, competitiveness, quality, sustainability. We want to enhance the capacity to adapt and address ecosystem shifts and their impacts on the fish and seafood sector. And that includes shifts related to climate change. The AFF, the Atlantic Fisheries Fund, contributed $14 million towards 37 projects related to climate change adaptation. And the provincial government's 30% share of being $4.2 million, industry has contributed $21 million towards projects over the same period. The AFF has also supported 37 projects related to modern refrigeration systems, which are climate change adaptations. We've got looking at synthetic refrigerants and sustainable alternatives, maximizing the efficiency of shrimp trawl fishing throughout the Notice ecosystem, which reduces fuel consumption. We've got providing the ability to make ice near an isolated wharf, so you're mitigating the impact of rising sea temperatures on harvested product and reducing the travel of fishermen who need to supply the ice. We're providing support for monitoring equipment for on-vessel live seafood storage, which extends the period at sea and reduces port travel while maintaining the quality of fresh seafood. In negotiating finalizing the Sustainable Agricultural Partnership, 12.5% of this fund is going to specifically support greenhouse gas emission reductions and carbon sequestration activities. This commitment is going to result in more than $5.3 million of investments over 5 years. The RALP, the Resilient Agriculture Landscape Program, is going to support on-farm land use and management practices that maximize provision of multiple environmental goods and services. We're going to be restoring and maintaining wetlands, water retention projects. We're supporting development under the update of environmental farm plans. Environmental farm plans are going to be required to access certain programming. Continued programming for other mitigation activities like precision farming, energy audits, land drainage. We're continuing with adaptation assistance with soil drainage and irrigation. We're continuing with research into climate change and how to measure emissions. It's a very exciting time, and the people, the stakeholders in agriculture, aquaculture, and fishery are ready to engage and ready to step up.
Thank you, Minister. So you've talked about a lot. So what are some of the pressure points that the department is going to come up against trying to implement their portion of the climate change plan?
So we're in the process of developing the strategy, and that's probably the most important part, is making sure that we develop a strategy which is appropriate and beneficial to the farmers. We recognize that a number of things that we look at in terms of mitigation and adaptation practices are things which are not profitable to farmers. And so the department is hoping that we can create practices that can assist them with putting those procedures and policies in place that will be more socially acceptable and more socially more beneficial for the public good.
Thank you. So does the department have a Gantt chart set up to meet their timelines and the projects they want to implement?
We do have a Gantt chart. We do. And looking at the timelines for our projects, and we do have a project manager who facilitates how the project progresses, how the projects are progressing, and to keep us on top of where we are and let us know how close we are to achieving those.
Wondering if we can have a copy of your Gantt so we can review it? And if we can, it gets just sent to the clerk.
Sure, we could get a hand on that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wetmore. Ms. Minton, do you have some questions?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Minister and your team for being here this morning. I want to ask some questions related to food insecurity. I'm wondering if you can speak to how the ministry's responsibilities in this climate change plan will address food insecurity, and how will it feed New Brunswickers?
So our local food and beverages strategy, which I just waxed rhapsodic about a few minutes ago, it's a big part. Food insecurity is a great big part of that. And I know that one of your colleagues would love us to be called the Department of Agriculture, Aquaculture, Fisheries, and Food. And I oftentimes will say when I'm out and about and people ask me what my portfolio is, I said, you eat it, we look after it. So I recognize that that's something that you're very concerned about. And we are as well. We recognize that we have areas where we are not self-sufficient yet, and we're working on those. We're working through the process. The GROW component, if you go into the local food and beverages strategy program, you can see the booklet itself. You can see these strategies and initiatives we have in place to grow more here in the province. And we recognize that our growing season has an impact on that, so we want to make sure we've got things like controlled environment agriculture and the different varieties that come with that, whether it be tunnel growing, greenhouses, et cetera, to make sure that the opportunities to build more food self-sufficiency, particularly with our produce level, are there.
Thank you. And so, goal 1, year 1 of your strategy part of it was to increase acreage of fruit and vegetable and to explore cooperative and community wholesale models. Have those 2 goals been achieved?
With relation to your question about increased acreage, we have made inroads in that. I do not have those numbers here with me today, but I can certainly get them to you. So I'll do that. We are working with, we've got a group who is continuing to work on the idea of a cooperative, because when we talk about retail opportunities for produce producers, we want to make sure that our local producers have access to those markets. And so by having things like a cooperative in place, we would hope to provide them greater market access. Community gardens is something that you and I have talked about, and I'm a big believer in. We're partnering with other government departments who have that as part of their mandate, and we continue to work to increase that presence within communities.
Thank you. Yes, if you can provide those numbers to
Sure.
the committee through the clerk.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. I would agree with my colleague Kevin Arsenault that food should be in your title. I think that would be great. And I guess I'm wondering, because I'm looking here and it doesn't really talk about feeding New Brunswickers specifically. I know that you've got this separate food and beverage strategy, but what are the benchmarks? What is the plan to make sure New Brunswickers are fed? Knowing that our food sovereignty and our ability to get food from other places is becoming more expensive and precarious, and we've seen that over the years, and our food supply will be at risk in some cases. We really are not in a great position with a lot of the types of food that we need to eat. So, can you speak specifically to the benchmarks and the plan to feed New Brunswickers? What is the ultimate goal?
So one of the things that we're doing, number one, we have to get out of silos. We are working in conjunction with other government agents, other government departments like social development, public health. We're also engaging them to help us with addressing the food needs of New Brunswickers. We recognize that it's something we have to pay attention to. The benchmarks, when we talk about benchmarks, on the website, on our DAF website, you can see that we want to increase food self-sufficiency. We've got a 10-pillar action plan, and how we measure, there is a model in place that looks at that. We're measuring it. Some of the 10 pillars would include labor issues, market access, land access. So those are things that we're looking at regularly to make sure where we are and what areas we're strengthening in and what areas we need to continue to pay attention to with greater diligence. Because on the website, it's very clear which commodities we are strong in and which ones we still need room to grow in. And of course, the ones that we need to grow in are the ones that we're paying the most attention to.
While obviously community gardens, community food forests, things like that are very valuable, and people's own gardens, we can't undervalue, obviously, the role of farmers. And we know that we've lost 404 farms, or 20%, since 2016. And we know there's some issues around succession, around the age of the labor force, only 7% of farmers being under 35. What is the plan to address this? Because this is one of the major obstacles in terms of growing food and feeding New Brunswickers. Exports have their role, but how are we going to feed New Brunswickers if we don't have enough farmers?
Well, it's interesting you would bring that up, because just of late I've been involved with, we had a partnership in my area with the Scotiabank, who hosted an evening where we talked about just that, the succession plan, and encouraging new farmers to come in. We've looked at doing a survey of our new entrants and making sure that the programs they need are available through the department, that we provide them with a level of expertise and the resources they need to become successful. We recognize that even in families, we've got dads and moms who've been lifelong farmers, and their children are taking over the farm, and once you get boots on the ground and involved in it, you realize that there's a whole bunch of stressors that as a child watching what your mom and dad do, it's a great deal different when you're involved in it and it's your livelihood. So what we've done, what Scotiabank did in this program we ran last week was identify a whole bunch of things that are critical to succession planning, whether it be legal, accounting, FCC's involvement, the department's involvement, and we had a series of expert panelists who talked about that with a full room of farmers and their offspring, giving them an idea of what resources are available to them, and then offering them an opportunity to have more intensive discussions with each of those experts at another time. So we're hoping that we can offer that on our website. You'll also see that we have an entire section devoted to new entrants, and it's a path forward, or the road forward for new entrants. And there are a number of resources available there, talking from things as dry as policy and legal things that are involved, licensing, right down to commodities and where the best land use is in the province. We've got maps available to young farmers who are interested, saying this area of New Brunswick is most beneficial for growing fruit trees. This one is more for grain. So we're putting a number of resources at the fingertips of young farmers, and we recognize that we still have work to do in that, and we're looking to our young farmers and our new entrants to give us feedback as to how we can better serve what their needs are. I'm thrilled to death to see that we've got more people involved.
Thank you. I'd be curious to hear whether these efforts are successful, and how you're evaluating success. And can you please tell the committee, in terms of being able to feed New Brunswickers and address food security and food sovereignty, what is the ultimate goal? Are there specific numbers, like how much of the food we're going to produce by a certain date? Can you give us some specific goals and benchmarks for food sovereignty and food security to feed New Brunswickers?
So in talking about numbers, we began with a 7% baseline when we released the new local food and beverages strategy. And our metric for that is a goal of 10%, going to 10% in 5 years. Let's look at the number of new entrants that we've had. And I asked actually just last week for a list of the new entrants because I'd like to see what we've had in the last 3 years, just so that I can reach out to those individuals and see what we can do to, how are the programs that we're offering beneficial to you and how can we improve them. But I also want to go to my baby, which is education. And that is the fact that we have got to promote agriculture as a beneficial and attractive career choice for young people. And that doesn't start in high school when most of them have started making the decisions of what they're going to do with the rest of their lives already. We need to start in elementary school by showing young people where their food comes from, getting their hands dirty, getting in the dirt, recognizing that lettuce doesn't come in a cellophane bag from the grocery store, getting our young people engaged. Then when we get to middle school, we have to start showing them what career opportunities there are. And not only to be as farmers, but to be in careers which support farming, agriculture, aquaculture, and fisheries. We have to show them that the science degree that they're interested in getting when they start looking at post-secondary education is something that can lead them into agronomy, it can lead them into environment, it can lead them into best practices in soil development. It's just, the opportunities are endless in agriculture for career opportunities for our young people. But it's a question of not knowing what you don't know. And if we don't do a better job of selling agriculture as a viable and exciting career opportunity to our young people, then we certainly are not going to build the workforce and build engagement. So that is has been one of my big pushes since I've been in this position, and will continue to be until I'm finished.
Thank you, Minister Johnson. Unfortunately, that concludes our time for questions this morning.
I wonder